What is up, YouTube? Welcome back, guys, and I'm sorry that I have thrown you guys for a loop, but I am going to take a break from the type tier list this week. So Poison will either come out later in the week if I have some time, or next week. My jaw's been locking up, so I don't want to record a super long video, and I also just have so many thoughts about Scarlet Violet that I just want to talk about. I can't wait to play this game. It comes out on Friday, so I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this game. But besides Nuzlocke, I am a huge VGC person. VGC's been one of the first immediate things I got into as like in terms of gaming. Like, it wasn't content creation. It was competitive gaming, and VGC specifically I've been playing 2014. 2015 is when I started. Kind of like the end of 2014, I watched Sejun Park win nationals win worlds live, and it was so cool. I was a teenager in high school, and so I've been playing, or was I in middle school? No, I was in high school at that point. So I've been playing VGC on and off since then. 2015 was a big year for me. I really don't like non-restricted formats, so I kind of take breaks those years. 2017 was my biggest year. I was just kind of playing on ladder. I didn't go to Dane tournaments or anything, but I've been playing on ladder, and I got really high on ladder with a Mega Tyranitar team. And then 2018, I can't remember, I think I was also restricted, right? And then when Sword and Shield came out, it really depended on the series, because they did kind of like seasonal series, so it depended on what series I played. But I played a lot of VGC. I just wasn't a huge fan of Dynamax, but so I've been on and off. But the VGC blood's still there. I've gotten coaching from a friend of mine that has gotten top 4 in Worlds in 2015. Name's Michael Flatum has been a huge help for me. So he's going on to do other kind of games, like he's been on like Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, other card games. So shout outs to him. He was a great coach for a while. And yeah, I've got a lot of VGC experience, and I want to talk about what I think the best Tera type is going to be. This is kind of a hard topic to talk about, because it's not like, let me try to format this better. I'm going to rank all of the types in terms of how good I think they will be as terastalization types. This is not how good. This kind of reflects how good types are in VGC in general, but also just how good is it to turn into this type. Like, the normal type isn't a bad type in VGC at all. Normals are usually pretty good, but is it really worth it to turn into a normal type for any Pokemon to terastalize? And this is going to be like more case by case. I'll try to give some examples as we go, because like obviously it's not like every Pokemon turning into a fairy type is pretty good, but some of them probably don't want to turn into a fairy type. It's probably better options. Like Landorus doesn't need to turn into a fairy type. What does he really get from that when he can turn into a water type, for example? So that's what this is gonna kind of be. How common and how useful I think these Tera types will be. How good they will be for your team building and stuff. I hope you guys are tracking. I'm trying to explain this a little bit better. So let's just go through it. I'll go this order, or I might jump around. We'll see. So TTT, Tera type tier list. This is VGC focused. You can take a little bit of this for like if you're playing like competitive OU and stuff. So I will be putting a lot more VGC content on the channel as we get in Gen 9. So if you guys are VGC players, here's some content for you. And if you're not, and if you're kind of just following me for the Nuzlocke stuff, but you might have some interest in VGC, then hopefully I'll be able to get you guys into it. And I might set up Discords and stuff so you guys can all play with each other. So let's get into it. Let's start with Bug. I don't think there's a reason to ever Tera Bug. The only reason you would is, and here's a note for terastalization. You change your type defensively. So how terastalization works is you change your type defensively. You become that one type. You change all your typing, you become that one type. You also get a not just stab, but you get the adaptability stab. So normal stab, same type attack bonus, is 1.5 times modifier to your attack damage if you are that type. What terastalization does, it basically gives you adaptability, which makes that 1.5 modifier 2 times modifier. So you have a very drastic increase to your damage if you're using a move of the same type as your Tera type. And everyone gets access to Tera Blast, which is a move that changes type when you Terastalize, changes to that type, and basically gives you a free stab move. It's 80 base power, And it's either physical or special depending on what your higher stat is. So it just works naturally. So it's like a very flexible move. It is 80 base power is fine, but it's not really the coverage you want to run because it doesn't turn into the type move. You can't really you're not really going to use it until you terastalize. And terastalizing is a thing in my opinion that you're going to use. You're not going to plan one Pokemon on your team to terastalize. You're gonna plan every Pokemon on your team and what they can terastalize into, and you're gonna terastalize in the match to like coin flip and like turn the tables on your opponent and make your Torkoal, who's weak to water, now a grass type who's beating water. Like, for example, like I think that's what the huge benefit of terastalization is going to be, is just this crazy coin flip of like, oh, I have the tools out ready to deal with this Regieleki. But now that it's an ice type, now I don't. And now I have to rethink my entire strategy while you're attacking me, kind of thing. That's what I think Terastalization is going to be used for. And so Tera Blast not being useful until you Terastalize is kind of a waste of a move slot. So I don't really think that you would ever want to run that move, but you can. It gives you... So the issue with Bug is there's not really like... One, defensively, there's not really a reason to ever go Bug. It gives you a fighting resistance, it gives you a ground resistance, but there's other that gives you more. Unless you need fighting and ground, I mean, you still go flying. Like, flying kind of just outdoes everything that Bug's going to do. Defensively for you, and offensively, I mean, like, Tera Bug U-turn is okay, but not really, I don't think that's worth going for. The only time I can see Tera Bug being useful is if you really want to power up the Mega Horn coverage you might have on, like, Tauros gets Mega Horn. That could be something like you're gonna be a Tauros with Mega Horn and you just like choice band that or something. That's the only time, but I just don't see it. I've done a million builds for all these Pokemon after looking at data mines and stuff, and it's just I can't find anything. I can't find a single reason to ever Terastalize into Bug. Dark I think is good, and I might change these tiers around. I might actually add another tier in the middle. But Dark so far is a really good type. Dark defensively gives you a very valuable Ghost resistance, because Ghost is a really strong offensive type, and there's some horrifying Ghost types like Spectrier that are in the game, that are in Pokemon now. And this is kind of assuming like not every Pokemon, but like most Pokemon will come back. So I'm not going to talk about like new Pokemon. This isn't like any spoiler territory. I'm just talking about old Pokemon that like might be in the metagame for just some examples. And yeah, like, offensive Ghost types are really scary. Dark also gives you the Psychic immunity and also gives you immunity to Prankster, which is really, really useful. And Dark itself is a really good offensive type, so just as on its own, Dark is one of the best types. I think in VGC, I always have a Dark type on my team. I think it's just so useful to have. And Terastalizing into Dark, there's a lot of Pokemon with good coverage. Going Tera Dark and just Foul Play is good coverage. The defensiveness with like Snarl, so you do some more chip damage. A lot of Pokemon get Dark Pulse, which is really good as well. Crunch, Throat Chop. There's Knockoff. There's a lot of good offensive Dark moves, and yeah, the defensiveness, the offensiveness to it, the ability to be, and the added effect to be immune to Prankster, I think gives Dark a really high spot in my brain. And I'm thinking A or S. Like, I think this is a really useful type to tear into. For just all the benefit you get. I'll start about A. Dragon, I think, is S. I'm gonna put Dark A. I'm gonna put Dark S. I think there's so much benefit to it. There's a lot of benefit you get from turning into a Dark type. Dragon, I'm putting an S as well, because in Dragon defensively is an amazing type. It has a lot of very useful resistances to electric, fire, grass, water. Very common types. Fire, water, grass is a really common core. There's always offensive electric types, and Dragon also makes up a very strong type core. I'd say there's two very strong and common type cores you're gonna encounter in VGC, and they want to team build around. One is Fire, Water, Grass. I'll put them up here together, and then the other one is Dragon, Fairy, Steel. Where's Steel? These three types together all make another core. And so, Terastalizing into Dragon, being like a Steel type that turns to Dragon, to be now resist Fire, is just good. You kind of like keep that core on your own. I think just the defensive resistances that it gives you, while also fitting this core, while also just being a strong offensive type too. It's only resisted by steel and fairy. Immune to fairy, resisted by steel, and that's it. You hit everything else. You hit everything else. You're hitting other dragons for super effective, and just neutral against everything. And just hitting for neutrals is good, because if you have good damage output, hitting every type, all 16 types for neutrals is really useful. So I put that in S tier. Where was grass? Where was water? Water was like down here. Steel is like down here. Is this alphabetical? It is alphabetical. That helps actually. Let me put this all back in order. Then grass, I think, is S or A. I really like grass. I found a lot of instances where going Tera grass could be useful. Grass gives you resistance to water, resistance to ground, both really good types to be resistant and turn around on. I found a lot of fire types turning into grass is really useful, like a Volcarona turning into a grass type and having Stab Giga Drain could be good, or Torkoal turning grass to now be resistant to ground types, or it could be a grass type that sits in rain or something, or Heatran was one I thought about that can just completely start beating ground types now and just having that like back grass typing in your pocket. And a lot of fires get some grass coverage, like it's like Volcarona's got Giga Drain. Most of them all have Solar Beam, like Torkoal with Solar Beam is good. And some waters want to turn grass type too, like Gastrodon usually shuts down most waters. Most water types just get walled out and can't do anything to Gastrodon. But now any water type that has to deal with Gastrodon can just Tera grass and tell the Gastrodon to peace out and just one-shot that thing. And then the Gastrodon might have to Tera back, but then that wastes the other teams to Tera type. I think grass has a lot of flexibility. Also, grass gives you two really good immunities to powder moves, being Rage Powder and Spore. Like a Moongus, they're going up against a Moongus, and you really need to hit to kill the thing next to Moongus. And the Moongus is going to Rage Powder you, or it's going to Spore you. You can Tera grass and just keep going about your business to kill the other thing, because you can't be redirected, you can't be put to sleep. Even on like defensive Trick Room Pokemon, I want to turn to a grass type just so they can't get spored. I think grass has a lot of merit to it, even though it has a lot of weaknesses. Just the offensive coverage, the defensive coverage against the few types it does have resistance against is very useful. Also, electric being another huge resistance for water. I think it pairs very well with water and fire. I just think like type cores, like water types turning into grass, or fire types turning into grass, or grass types turning into fire, or grass types turning into water. You have that integral core that's going to be so useful. And same thing with dragon and fairy and steel, like a fairy type going steel type, or steel type going fairy actually, or dragon going steel, or dragon like there's all of this core this core I think is super valuable. So I think really highly of all of these types. So grass is going to be up here in A. I think if it had less weaknesses, it would be an S, but you do give yourself a ton of weaknesses, so you have to be careful there. Fairy, S. It's a really good type. There's a lot of Pokemon that get like Dazzling Gleam for coverage, or Play Rough for coverage. It pairs perfectly with Steel types. There's a lot of Steel types I've seen that I've thought about that could go perfectly into Fairy. That might have like play. Like there's a like I know Copperajah gets Play Rough, so like Copperajah going Fairy type could be really cool. Make it a really scary Sheer Force Trick Room Pokemon. It's also just a really good type. Immunity to Dragon is a big deal too. Like Dragon going into Fairy it could be really good. Just like, oh, there's a Latios that wants to Draco Meteor me or something. Boom, I'm Fairy now. Now I'm immune and now I just win. Like it's just like the coin flip thing, or not even. It's not even coin flip. I guess it's like the big play. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what term I want to say for it. But Fairy's gonna be really good. Offensively, it's amazing. Defensively, it's amazing. Core-wise, it's amazing. There's a lot of Pokemon that get good coverage with it too. And even like offensive Fairy, like if you want to Terastalize your Sylveon into Fairy again and get the adaptability boost on your Pixelate Hyper Voice, that's a lot of damage you can do to it too. But I really think somewhat defensive / offensive, like a mix of those are going to be better Tera types than just staying the same type, because you kind of just present the same problem to your opponent, but now it's just like slightly stronger. Like a Fairy type Sylveon, I'm already preparing myself for. If it hits me, now it's just stronger. But a Fire type Sylveon is a way different story that I have to make a whole new plan for. And that's what I really like about Terastalization. Electric is B. I think I'm going to leave it B, and I think it's really only... You really only want to Tera into Electric if you are... I mean, offensively it's good, but like defensively, the only thing it can give you is if you have Levitate. If you're a Pokemon with Levitate, if you can go Tera Electric, like Mismagius or Hydreigon could go Electric, I guess. Or like if Latios could be a really cool Electric type. Because then you become a Pokemon with no weaknesses, but you don't really have any resistances. It's the flying, you know, whatever, Electric, whatever. Is that it? Steel? It's kind of whatever. So defensively, the only benefit you get is if you're Electric type, or if you have Levitate. You could be Mono Electric with Levitate and have no weaknesses, and if you're kind of a bulky Pokemon already, or like the Rodoms going Mono Electric could be really good for them. But that's kind of it. It's like if it kind of relies on if you have Levitate, because if you don't have it, I mean, offensively, it still gives you benefit, like Landorus going Electric. Like, Landorus going Tera Electric to slap a Water type that thinks it's going to handle it. It could be good, but, like, Landorus would also maybe get more out of Grass? Maybe not, I don't know. Or, like, maybe going Steel or going a Water type itself. I think of so many more examples defensively that give more benefit than Electric. Electric really is just there if you have Levitate. Then it's a great ability. Then it's a great type to go. And that's kind of it. It's kind of middle of the pack for me. I've seen a lot of fighting. I'm going to put fighting in the B tier too. There's not a ton of defensive, but there's a lot of offensive coverage. Fighting type move coverage is everywhere. There's a ton of Pokemon that get like close combat, maybe high jump kick, low kick, brick break, superpower. It's everywhere. And it makes for some really good coverage, especially going stab coverage with a lot of types, like a flying going into fighting. Like flying and fighting coverage is really, really strong together. Ground and fighting, fairy and fighting. It's a really strong offensive type. It hits a lot. Defensively, it's not that big of a play, but you kind of make this. I'm gonna switch up my. I would kind of do it like one example I thought of is like Staraptor, with close combat and like Brave Bird. Is you Tera fighting, you're no longer weak to Electric type, you're no longer weak to Rock type, you actually beat Rock types and Ice types and Steel types and stuff. You just switch the tables on them. You're not exactly bulkier, you're not like, it's not gonna like maybe save you and make you like impossible to kill, but it gives you that one edge, and now you're just hitting really hard with close combat. And killing things that you wouldn't kill before, and you still have your stab. You still retain your stab on old types when you Terastalize. So Staraptor turning into a fighting type still has the flying stab. It's just like, it's normal. It's the same amount of stab what it was before. You don't get the adaptability boost on flying unless you turn flying. So you still have your old stab. So that's what I think fighting's gonna be really good for, is like ground types going fighting and having like Earthquake in close combat coverage, or Brave Bird in close combat coverage, or Superpower and an Ice type. I don't know, stuff like that. I think that's gonna be good. Also, Body Press Pokemon turning fighting just for more damage. So I think it's gonna be good. I think B or A tier. I'm bouncing between here. There's been a lot of examples like I thought of that could go fighting and pull it off pretty well. So I'll throw it A. How about that? Fire, I think, is A or S. I'm not sure if I want A or S. You can't be burned. So outside of just normal fire resistances, you also gain immunity to burn. You cannot be burned, which is great for physical attackers. That's kind of all it does, really, defensively, but it just, again, with like fire, your grass types going fire can have a lot of benefit there, because now they're not weak to fire. Grass types kind of already scare away the waters, so turning into a type, like grass types turning into fire, the water types have already kind of left you alone for the time being. They don't really want to fight with the grass type, so they kind of just leave. Steel types going into fire is pretty good. There's a lot of good examples. There's a couple good examples for it. Going Tera Fire and using fire coverage in the sun can be really strong too if you have like a Torkoal or a Groudon teammate. So there's some good benefit to it. I think A is fine. I think it's not quite like S. Maybe S. I'm trying to think of. Let me look on my showdown. I'm not gonna show you guys anything, so you don't see any spoilers or anything. Like, so you guys can just like stay ignorant to anything that's in Scarlet Violet. I won't show anything off like that. I'm trying to think if I have a lot of Pokemon that go fire in my theory crafting, or if I don't really have that many. Because if I have a lot, I'd be willing to put it A tier or S tier, I mean. But if I don't have that many, And I think I'll just keep it in A. I thought of like Gastrodon going fire could be cool. So like you already have Storm Drain, so you can be a fire type Gastrodon and water types because you already have Storm Drain, so you're already immune to water. That's kind of a cool case scenario. Some dragons could go fire to hit steel types and resist fairy. I think I'm just gonna leave it A. I feel like I'm seeing better types. Like there's some better case scenarios, but there's also some great examples. Fairy turning into fire was one of the big examples. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it S tier because I don't think it has as many drawbacks as grass. I think Pokemon like fairy types going fire because a lot of fairy types have like mystical fire coverage, which is good coverage. Like Sylveon, for example. Sylveon gets stopped by only steel types and poison types and other fire types. You go fire, you now resist poison, or you resist steel, you resist fire. Sorry, you have a way to hit poison. A lot of poison types like Amoonguss, like has a fire weakness to it. Like poison on its own isn't the most amazing typing. It's usually dual typed, so you might be able to hit the secondary type with fire. You still can't really do anything to another fire type, but at least you're resisting them now, and you can kind of just focus your efforts on the other Pokemon. And like Hatterene has mystical fire too. I thought fairy to fire was a really cool jump, and you have just great coverage there. Just great offensive coverage. You kind of I thought that was a really good jump. And fairy types are like always good, so I'll put fire maybe like the bottom of S. Something like that. We'll do that. Flying is not that great because there's not good flying offensive moves. You don't really have, like, Brave Bird's kind of the only good one. You don't really have Brave Bird unless you're already a flying type, so you'd be terastalizing into a flying type you already have. Like Talonflame, for example, already would just go Tera Flying to get rid of the fire weakness or something. Otherwise you kind of have to rely on Tera Blast, which is just not that great. But defensively, the ground immunity is great, the fighting resistance is great. It's kind of like electric. Like, I see good use for it, but I think there's better just because of coverage and everything. Ghost has the amazing benefit of now you're immune to Fake Out, and you're immune to normal and fighting as well. And offensively, Ghost has it's amazing offensive type. A lot of Pokemon get like Shadow Ball or coverage, so Ghost is going to be a pretty good typing. I don't think it's quite S tier, but the immunity to Fake Out could be really good. Ground, I think, is A or S. The electric immunity is great. Ground offensively is great. And there's a lot of Pokemon, like, I thought of some Swift Swim Pokemon that might learn, like, Drill Run or something, could turn ground type and then be a ground type in the rain for some really cool coverage. Or maybe you're a fighting type that has Earthquake and now you want to power up your Earthquake, which fighting and ground has really good coverage. Some fire types can turn into ground and be really useful. Water types can turn into ground and have that, crazy coverage there. There's a lot going for ground. It's one of these two. I'll put it S for now, and I might move it if S is too heavy, but really good offensive type, really good offensive coverage, and you still get the added benefit of like electric immunity and like rock resistance, steel resistance. So it's still pretty good defensively too. Ice is not F. There is scenarios you might actually want to go ice type. Mainly, so the main examples I could see of ice types, or of a Pokemon terastalizing into ice is Pokemon that already are ice type, because there is new changes to Hail. Hail's being replaced by Snowstorm, which increases the defense of ice type Pokemon in the snow. It's kind of like what sand does to rock types. Now you have that, and so you can make a really bulky like Glaceon in hail in the snow or something. The only other Pokemon I could see turning ice would be maybe like a electric type, like a Regieleki or something, turning ice to smack the Landorus in front of it. That's kind of it. That's kind of the only few examples, so it's better than Bug. I have more examples of it than Bug, but not any more than anything else. Normal's kind of the same. You don't get any defensive benefit. You get the ghost immunity, but that's not as big. Like, you get more benefit from turning into dark type, in my opinion, in almost every scenario. But Pokemon with boom burst coverage, like a Noivern, or how do I keep forgetting this Pokemon's name? The electric poison dude. What's his name? Toxtricity. I can always keep forgetting his name. Going Tera normal, getting the adaptability boost on boom burst could be really strong. So I think C tier for normal. C, yeah, that's kind of it. A lot of every Pokemon has normal coverage, but it's just like there's usually better. There's usually better. Poison I'm putting in B. I think it's worse than Steel for just being like, oh, I'm gonna be a fighting type turning into another type to beat fairies. But sometimes you might want to go Poison instead of Steel, depending on depending on the scenario. Like one example I thought of was like Urshifu would probably rather go Poison than go Steel, because you get Urshifu's already weak to fighting, and going Steel you can still keep that fighting weakness, while Poison would give you the fighting resistance instead, and so you have like a better defensive coverage while you're still hitting with fairy types. So I think there's a couple cases for Poison. I'll put it in the B tier with these other guys. Could be pretty good, but more situational. Psychic is another. There's been a lot of lackluster ones actually in a row. Psychic is one you don't get as much benefit from it. I think there's just others. The Psychic, like some Pokemon get Psychic coverage, but I think there's just always a better type to Terastalize into, unless you really need the fighting resistance, or like I thought, like maybe like a Golduck, Swift Swim Golduck with Psychic and going Tera Psychic and being a Swift Swim Psychic Pokemon could be pretty good. There's a couple cases here and there. I think B is just fine. It's not horrible, but I think there's just like everything above it is just better. Going Tera Rock for the sand boost is good. Outside of that, there's not really a reason to do it, so I'm going to put it next to Ice. I think it's just weather dependent. I think like Tyranitar would probably want to go Mono Rock to drop his quad weakness, and I don't really see other things wanting to turn into Rock. I don't see anything else wanting to turn into Rock for the coverage, because there's other types to go into that give you more defensive benefit. And the Rock coverage, honestly, is like Rock Slide, which I don't think is worth Terastalizing for. So I think C is fine. Steel is S. Putting it with Fire, Dragon Fairy Steel. Just this core is really strong. You have a million resistances that you gain. A lot of Pokemon have like Iron Head or Flash Cannon, so it's really easy to tear into it, because you already have that coverage that you want to put on your team. Or even like going Tera Steel for like Gyro Ball or Heavy Slam or something could be good. I think it just makes whatever you turn Steel type that much harder to get rid of, because all the resistances they gain, like a Gastrodon that's now a Steel type, is just irritating. Or a Glastrier that's Steel type, or what if your what if your Drought Pokemon is like a Pelipper is now Steel type. Like just the pure defensiveness you get from it is just so good. And then also offensively, it's a way to hit Fairy, it's a way to hit Rock, it's a way to hit Ice. You're gonna hit Rock and Ice pretty okay regardless, but a way to hit Fairy is really huge. And just the defensive benefit you get from it. And it still hits a good amount of things for neutral, so it's still fine offensively too. I think S for sure. And Water, also S for sure. Fitting into the core, Fire, Water, Grass. It's great for like dragons and grounds that are weak to Ice Beam. Now resist Ice Beam. It could be good for a fire type to turn into water, to now be like a water type going like a Torkoal. I guess you wouldn't turn Torkoal into it, but like I guess not many fire types have water coverage. Maybe like a Colossal would want to go water, so you get the you still get your Steam Engine boost into that. I think really more like dragon types, ground types. The Ice Beam resistance is the bigger deal there. Maybe some flying types you want to go water. And there's a decent amount of Pokemon that have got Liquidation for water coverage. Some things get Surf, some things get like Hydro Pump. Scald is gone from the game. It's only on Volcanion, so not everything else Scald anymore. So lower in S just because of not everything has the coverage for it. but I still think it's like there's a lot of good like ground types, dragon types that turn into water. And that, I think, is the list. I think S is pretty heavy, but I mean that's how it should be. Like there should be a lot of different types that give you a lot of different, you know, combinations that are going to be strong. I really do think these ones in A tier have a lot of potential to grass. There's a lot of examples I thought of for grass, like fire types turning grass and stuff. And yeah, I just don't really have... If you have any ideas that could be useful for something to turn into bug, please let me know. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Stay tuned for more VGC content coming up soon, as well as I'll go back to the type tier list eventually. Just give me some time to get my hype out about Scarlet Violet, because I'm really excited about this game. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. Love y'all. Peace.